Hello, and welcome to an adventure like no other. Far more than what you have known, there is something far more to be known than you can ever know. And it is all about you, the real you, your real awareness with your intuitive senses. You were never taught that the real you, your real awareness, is operating 5 bodies in cause and effect, restricting creation. You have been taught to think that you are only a one-dimensional human person, with a mind and emotions, and with a very short lifespan on this planet Earth. More than what your mind can grasp is your intuitive senses that can be opened to see beyond all your restrictions. You have always had an opening to see beyond what you have known, and this has been purposely kept from you, and this is where you have heard rumors and stories about your nightly dreams. Your so-called dreams is your opening to your intuitive senses that will allow you, the personal you, to excel beyond what you have previously known. Everyone has intuitive senses, and very few people take advantage of what is possible by recognizing something more than their mind can understand. Creation has its place for all of us, and then there is all life, which is far more than anything than what can become with creation. Everything we experience is necessary for us to survive with whatever we choose and decide our life to be. New Kevin Smith is the great witness to something more than what can be taught and learned in any school. It can be so that when anyone first listens to Kevin's intuitive side experiences, also known as real side experiences, from what their personal mind has known, Kevin's manner of expression will at first be rather different to comprehend. This is where this introduction and reading the new books and Facebook groups will help. Have fun deciding. Duane the Great Writer and Seer.
In this real side experience, I would find myself in the company of a new friend I would recognize, for he would be operating in his usual human form. The individual would be Ronald August, and we were stationed in a particular area of creation which was shrouded in the standard oppressive gloom that practically three-dimensional position of the simulator currently comprises of, due to the distortion and compaction of the idea-laden overall consciousness that affects it. For over the more recent months, have the real side environments I have found myself in, regardless of what's taking place, generally have comprised of a darkness, and perhaps, were it not for the oversight, the view of the real awareness, where creation can be observed for how it actually is, as opposed to whatever consciousness idea filters may obscure the reality of what the simulator has become as seen from the perspective of the body form apparatus. Were I strictly operating only from the personal self, this overwhelming darkness may not be apparent to myself either. And indeed, on the occasions I happen to astral project, as was the case but a few nights ago, the astral level also would be predominantly a dimension of darkness. For, of course, if the overall consciousness is compacted and unconsciousness prevails, at least for this moment, as the complete multi-dimensional layout is effected from the consciousness, nothing, no dimension of the simulator can be beyond deterioration. But anyway, Ronald and myself would be undertaking a task seemingly. Duane would also be present and orchestrating our operation, as it would comprise of a series of stages, and where we would be reporting to Duane with each step we successfully executed. Although Duane was present, he was as though slightly out of phase with our position, visually presenting as though he were operating in a part of the dimension we were in, but not directly accessible, and our body forms would not so much move to his position as we never left the area of the dimension we were in, more that our awareness, beyond the simulated forms they were animating, would be in a conjunction with the Duane's, and where the updates on our assignment were afforded. For indeed, aside from the consciousness-effected illusion of a separation and apartness of a form and a feature, the reality of a life, that which we each are, is this everything isness, where all ideas, including that of distance and space, no longer apply. As we operate through the consciousness of body forms, we have the simulation of whatever created reality we find ourselves within, absent of creation, consciousness, and the body forms. We are all this isness, real awareness, aside from every idea that affects the simulated realities. Our assignment consisted of accessing a selection of time periods from human history, and as though retrieving items of value, some of which visually appeared to be books, others were data audio recordings, and others were computer-like disks containing data information. It would seem that the further back in history, so-called, we went, the more likely the information we were gathering would take the form of a book and parchment, the technologies more so becoming human species prevalent in more recent times, and where we were securing the audio recordings and data disks, etc. Although this wasn't strictly the case, as we were retrieving what would be considered data technologies that, according to official history, shouldn't have been present in the human history eras we frequented. But then, the reptilians that have governed the earth have boasted advanced technology throughout human history. It's only according to them as to when it becomes commercially available for the human slaves. There would be one specific and key year, as I was able to recollect, where we secured an item from 1993, and as I mentioned, for every successful acquisition of item, data, and written material, they would become available to the simulated Duane operating in his alternative dimension, and the awareness of Ronald, myself, and Duane would be in automatic conjunction, and where impressions, updates as to our progress on the simulated creational real side were so. In actuality, every idea that has affected every era of human history is present in isness reality terms. From the real awareness position, then, all is immediately accessible, and where we can enter any moment of any species progression and undertake whatever objective we decide. Only through the consciousness design, which incorporates the ideas of time and space, are ideas processed in linear sequences that present as though the passage of a progression. The effects we have experienced that will be stored in the current body form memory vehicle we consider as the past. Those as yet to be made manifest physical level-wise, the agreements we are currently formulating, considered the future. And yet the entirety of human civilization, from inception to the current moment, all is present, just as a movie is complete and contained on the DVD disc, and only from the personal self-perspective must we sit through the movie from start to a conclusion. The body forms decode the ideas of consciousness, the ideas that are the overall and complete circumstances of a species in experiential sequence, just as the DVD players will. Although, as each body form is inserted at a certain stage of a species progression, memory will only be collated of that certain period, as each new body form will have a memory body devoid of experience reference. Although, as a part of the species, so the species' overall program is taken on, each human then will have a potential access to the complete history, so-called, of humanity, though not directly accessible, more so subconsciously placed. But as I said, from the real awareness position, as a part of the isness everything that animates through all consciousness, every idea that is every species effected progression is available, is accessible, and where simulated forms can be placed and carry out objectives accordingly. In essence, we can travel back in time from the personal self perspective, as Ronald and I were doing, for the purposes of essential data and information retrieval as orchestrated by Duane. In a recent real side experience, I shared how Duane would be constructing a device where communication with aliens would be possible. As it transpired, the device was for the purposes of not only engaging with the aliens of the inbound to Earth Armada, but to assist in its successful navigating through the various dimensions required to traverse through to reach the planet Earth's position. The alien Armada is a conglomeration of assorted species, all of which are electing to become more aware, and part of their stepping up effort in assistance and benefit of life and awareness is to make their presence known on a vast human scale, that their fleet feature in every sky of the earth for every eye to perceive, and ideally to bring humanity into their confederation of awareness becoming species. That this can occur is a subject to agreement, primarily that of the species whose experience it will be impacting, that being humanity, and so it is an ongoing effort to attempt to steer agreement that this event can take place, with the various dark force reptilian control factors in play, the ideas that they represent required to be regulated and if necessary removed, the interfering characters displaced, etc., to smooth the road for the Armada. But ultimately humanity decides. What transpires is according to the idea agreements that become as human consciousness implanted, either the disrupting ideas that are the controllers, or those that will ensure the execution of the Armada's objective. That Duane could construct his device required my gathering of technology that an unmanned, or should I say, unaliened scout ship of the Armada had dropped, as revealed to me in the same recent real side experience. And now, in this real side experience, I would be assisting a scientist, one who was a human, stepping up and becoming more aware. For all over the earth had curious artifacts been dropping from the skies, their source never determined, and there have been a number of books and movies where such a scenario has been the theme, but where generally what follows is something of an abrasive, adverse nature. In this case, however, impressions would reveal that the artifacts, their appearances, and design not made apparent, were similar in nature and purpose to that dropped by the scout ship, the technology that was necessary for the construction of Duane's device. A scientific character had made his presence known and was seemingly tasked with the acquisition of all the alien artifacts, and I was assigned to assist him. The Dark Force controllers would learn of this occurrence and be motivated to mobilize their resources to interfere with our objective. They would be orchestrating the police and military of the countries within proximity of where each alien item had been dropped, securing the area, cordoning it off, and declaring it off limits to civilians, with whatever justification and reason was conjured up. And there would be several instances where the scientist and myself would have to be creative to bypass the military presence, the avoiding of the main roads, blockaded as they would generally be, and where we would proceed on foot through fields, woodlands, and underbrush, etc., to reach our location. For it seemed the controllers were aware the items had been dropped and their approximate position, but couldn't precisely pinpoint their locations. For in the previous real-side experience, the technology item had been dropped on the Earth, though within a frequency slightly removed and out of phase with it, and perhaps this was the case here, a mechanism ensuring the controllers and their mobilized planetary military of each country where an item dropped couldn't acquire the items, but the scientist and myself had the ability to retrieve them, maybe utilizing a means just like in the previous experience where I secured the dropped item by phasing into the dimension where it resided. The actual recovery of the items, again like in the previous experience, I wouldn't have revealed to my personal self, but interestingly, one Dark Force reptilian controller, although her body form deceased from the physical level, would step up, seemingly be sincere with intention to assist the scientist and myself, and that would be the former Queen of England. For there would be a point in the experience where we had an audience with her, in a grand palace, and where she would be operating in her previous human form, dressed in her usual expensive and elaborate attire, and as I said, at that moment at least, she desired to assist us, interested in the idea of becoming more aware additionally, and would pull her resources and the influence she still commanded to facilitate our alien item securing endeavour. As I mentioned, this was related to the previous real-side experience in regards to the construction of Duane's device, and in conjunction with the alien Armada event, and indeed perhaps the first scene I shared here also was a part of this overall enterprise, where Ronald and I were securing data and information from a previous Earth-human time eras, though this is more speculation on my personal part. And then, in a final scene, would be a continuation of this overall theme, for a group of aliens of a particular species would present themselves as being a recent addition to the Armada fleet. For it does seem that the Armada is constantly expanding in size as more alien species become aware of it and its objective, and decide to become a part of their awareness becoming a confederation and participate in the Earth and humanity mass contact event. These particular and recent additions to the Armada fleet alien species were also involved specifically with the releasing of the packages of alien technology as I revealed as happening in the previous scene. And so, at this point, revealed was the exact source of these alien artifacts, as orchestrated by the Armada fleet were these particular aliens tasked with this objective. For whatever reason, the aliens dropping the technology packages seemed more vulnerable than the other species of the fleet, as though their position was more precarious. All the alien species of the fleet were taking quite the risk in being involved in such an event, to oppose the wants and desires of the controllers, as the dark forces would seek to maintain their human slaves exactly as they are. The danger that another individual or species can pose is dependent upon agreement. Any individual or species can develop themselves technologically or powerfully in regards to their body forms, but as everything any individual experiences is dependent on the idea of it being consciousness implanted, for a powerful or technological based individual or species to impose adversely on another, so this is agreement that the target recipient of the intended adversity must have as a consciousness placed. I can only be harmed or eradicated by another if I agree that this can be so, or despite the best efforts of my would-be assassin, their efforts will be unsuccessful, as absent of the idea and the corresponding simulated effect can't follow. The dark forces, in all their forms, have ensured that agreement which affords them the ability to harm and destroy virtually every individual and species in the simulator is a consciousness present. However, the process of awareness entails a facing and releasing of all ideas of consciousness, including those as extended to the dark forces and their destructive potentiality. The various species of the alien Armada have been going about their respective process of awareness for a duration now. They are relinquishing agreements, which as they do so, they become progressively more untouchable in creation, as they are releasing all ideas that present as effects of adversity in relation to the potential imposition of others. This recent species addition to the fleet would only have begun their process of awareness. As such, they will have much by way of agreement to face and release, including the agreements in relation to the dark forces. Consequently, they will be more vulnerable within their initial stages of ultimately all is recognition, hence why their position seemed more precarious than that of the rest of the fleet. But regardless, their species were of a particular that they were the best suited for the constructing and dispatching across the earth the packages of alien items required for retrieval and necessary for the construction of Duane's Armada-related communication and coordinating device. In the previous scene, I had been tasked with securing these items, accompanying a scientist. In this scene, I would be continuing to retrieve the alien items, evading the various military that were locking down the areas that the alien artifacts were located within, but present with me instead would be another Earth-based human Nufriend, though I failed to recollect which on waking. Very likely it was Jeremy. Up until now, I would never see the actual securing of the items I sought, but it seemed, at this stage of this sequence of previous real-side experiences, and the scenes of this current experience, the appearance of the items would be made apparent, as I laid my hands on a number of them, as I phased into the frequency they were residing within, that the dark forces were unable to locate them, an extensive effort that was incorporating many areas and countries of the earth. The items themselves didn't make much sense to my personal self. They were beyond the ability to define based on the references I have available. Such was the extent of the alien nature of their design. They were small in size, they could be held in the hands with ease, but what I was able to discern were depictions across their surfaces that reminded me a little of Egyptian hieroglyphs. The glyphs themselves resembled animals and birds. They were not, however, etched onto the surface through the use of tools, more as glowing images, as though holograms, attached to the external surfaces of the items. Additionally, would certain of the items be emitting a particular frequency which contained a code or data information, and where I not only would retrieve the items themselves, but utilizing a very advanced device, appearing somewhat like a small cell phone, so this data would be transferred to the handheld device, as though it had the ability to tune in with the alien frequency and store the information it contained, for whatever purpose this was deemed necessary. There the experience would conclude. Further verification of the impending alien Armada event and the various steps and stages required to ensure its successful arrival, the securing of the alien items and technologies being dropped globally to be utilized as a part of ensuring the Armada fleet's arrival, and the construction of Duane's device that is in relation to this whole affair.